What's your theory that you can't prove, but that you think might hold up if someone were to do some real, legitimate research on it? I believe there's a link between getting motion sick and being able to tell which way is up underwater in low visibility. Like the inner ear is more accurate in people who are prone to motion sickness. I noticed in an episode of Mythbusters when Adam, super motion sick, was able to swim upwards every time when blindfolded and spun around underwater. But Jamie, Iron Gut, swam every which way. It's 2 data points, but I think there's something to be explored. I get very easily motion sick. BRB going to go jump in a river blindfolded. This is fascinating. Now that you mention it, if someone were to investigate this, they should look at pro surfers. They spend a lot of time getting tumbled around in white water and need to be good at righting themselves. Plenty of people are so traumatized by 1 or 2 experiences with rough surf that they don't have the nerve to go back in the water, which is totally fair. Surfers also need really good balance, which is inner ear related. Most people in my family get extremely motion sick, and I have like 5 cousins who surf regularly at really rough beaches. Off the top of my head, the ones that had the worst motion sickness out of all of us, as children, I don't know if it's still the case, those cousins are most hardcore surfers. I believe that Earth has shifted, or global warming has made the seasons about 2 months off. Winter starts later and goes into spring. Summer is later and goes into fall. Everything is pushed back. It's global warming, I believe. People have no idea how far this has gone. Every government is downplaying it so it won't affect their economy. The weather has changed so much. When I look back through old photos and look closer in the background, the leaves fall at a different time now. There is a lot less snow. Subtle, but very real and powerful changes. After hearing that MS has a viral origin, and that there's a cold virus that majorly increases the odds you become obese, I think we'll find out in the future that a ton of diseases have viral origins. Maybe it takes certain genetics to interact with the virus and create the issue, but I think we'll find out that viruses are a major deal. What society looks like after that, who knows, but it'll have a major impact. Just like long COVID, all of us may be dealing with our own long virus symptoms depending on what we've encountered and how our body reacted. Imagine how archaic future people will think we are, that we were so unaware of the long-term effects of certain viruses, and we were so nonchalant about it all. All billionaires are psychopaths that should be institutionalized and medicated. The lack of empathy and basic humanity mirrors serial killers. Having the ability to heal the world and choosing to instead sit on the wealth and corrupt governments for your own additional gain is absolutely psychopathic and should be criminal. I definitely hears about some research years ago that claimed an alarming percent of CEOs matched the profile of psychopathy. I think it was part of a documentary where this scientist was talking about how a certain combo of results of a brain scan, a certain gene, caveman gene or something like that, and an abusive upbringing is a perfect storm for becoming a psycho killer or something like that. He looked at hundreds of brain scans of violent criminals. The twist came when he also looked at his own, and tested positive for the gene, but had a loving and safe upbringing. When his family were told, they were like, "Yeah, that tracks, eesh." Neurosurgeons also rate high in psychopathy. It's their superpower. They're able to make life or death decisions under immense levels of stress because they're emotionally detached. You just make sure that someone else does the bedside manner part because they're too emotionally detached for that part. Just important to note that psychopathy doesn't equal serial killer. And serial killer doesn't necessarily mean psychopath. In an airport, take 3 people and start a random line somewhere that makes no sense. People will start to line up behind them. There is a theory about this in parking lots. If someone parks in a randomly empty area, others will start parking near it. They do. I like to eat in my car, and park in the very back of grocery store parking lots, and such where there's nobody around. Usually by the time I'm done eating, some random person has decided to park directly next to me. I hate it. I think previous generations of adults and children with ADHD partly went undetected due to the prevalence of smoking and secondhand smoking, as well as the prevalence of amphetamines to treat weight loss and other things they never prescribe it for these days. I know some of it has to do with awareness, but nicotine does mask a lot of the effects of ADHD for a good deal of people, and we were all heavily exposed to it, so it Not just old-timers either. My mom thinks ADHD is bullshit, and such refused to ever get me evaluated. Looking back, school would have been exceedingly more productive had I been properly diagnosed. It wasn't until my 30s that I finally got on focused medication, and my God, what a game changer. The peak in serial murderers during the 1980s seems most likely explained by the maturation of a generation exposed to lead poisoning during infancy by leaded gasoline. There is an established relationship between lead exposure during development and later criminal behavior. Would be cool to see more research on this. I'd also wager that the uptick in the 70s-80s would also likely be caused in part by it. But also another factor is these were people raised by veterans of WW2 who in large numbers received no therapy or any other forms of aid for what they'd seen, which did cause a lot of child abuse. People come back in the mid-40s, a few years later they have kids who 20 to 30 years later are in the 70s, 80s and start killing. Depression is a stomach disorder. I think it's kinda like cancer, there's not just one type of it. Mine, for example, severe depression for 17 years. Fixed by taking magnesium. Still have my little bouts here and there, but otherwise I'm much better. So I personally think it's not a stomach disorder, but just a chemical imbalance that is different from person to person. The cat distribution system is real. At some point anecdotal evidence adds up to be science, man. We have never once gone and gotten a cat. We have also never had less than 2. That is not a coincidence. I swear the CDS has my ass set to reply all. I started doing trap neuter return a few years ago, and I literally haven't gone more than a month without finding new cats. Everybody at the local animal birth control clinic knows me, and almost all my friends have adopted at least one of my rescues. I've tried stopping. I tried enjoying having a clean apartment after my final kitten was adopted out, and 4 days later one of my customers from my job mentioned they found 3 kittens in the shed in their yard. After a few days before the last of them went to a new home, my neighbors skipped out on rent and abandoned 3 gorgeous gray cats that crawled into my apartment through a hole behind my dishwasher when they got hungry enough. It doesn't stop. I think some pets can sense a stranger's hormones and recognize if they're a threat. I'm not referring to pets who have past traumas that affect their behavior. I mean the pets from stories like, "Normally my dog hates men but she loves this guy," or, "I knew something was wrong. My cat always hated that person." There have been recorded cases of dogs who could smell cancer and Parkinson's, so I think the premise has merit. It's a difficult study to imagine. There are countless variables that could affect the results. Is the animal protective enough of its owner to care what a stranger's intent is in the first place? Are there some hormones that wouldn't be easily recognizable? Can we parse what responses are just part of a pet's personality rather than a response to external stimuli, etc.? To be honest, I've just gotten a lot of compliments on how pets take a quick liking to me, and it would be cool to get peer-reviewed validation someday, lol. Here's the one I had that got me to post the question. I think the reason so many people read their horoscopes and find them oddly fitting and think their star sign describes their personality in some way is because it legitimately does. But that the cause of this is nothing to do with the arrangement of the planets and stars and everything to do with the way where your birth falls in the calendar year has to do with the way you are socialized. How close is your birthday to major holidays in your culture? Do you start school this year or next year because you weren't old enough? Do you have your dawn of conscious memory in the winter or the summer? If the first years really do shape your personality as much as they say, then having all your significant first milestones at different times of year probably plays a big part in how you're raised, how you view the world, and how you view yourself. Some things that are considered paranormal may actually be real, and we just don't have the scientific knowledge or technology to understand it. I once read about some catacombs near Rome where it was well known since ancient times that you would get sick if you stayed there for long periods of time. They assumed it was a curse or such due to proximity to the dead. Turns out there was low-level radioactive elements in the catacombs. The sickness was radiation poisoning. They just didn't have the means to identify and understand it. Hypothesis: left-handed people are more likely to have better analytical and problem-solving skills. Rationale: whenever a left-handed person is taught a task, writing, throwing a ball, etc., they must dissect and reverse the task in their mind in order to replicate it. That lays the groundwork for analytical thinking from a young age. Supporting data: left-handed people make up 10% of the total population, Yet they account for 20% of Mensa, implying a potential correlation between left-handedness and some level of intelligence. Urinary tract infections are deadly to older people and are much more dangerous than previously studied. I know too many elders who have been diagnosed with dementia, psychosis, and other disorders when the culprit was an out-of-control UTI. Music is the most important thing in the universe, and aliens are mining it from us. What's an unproven theory you believe could hold up with real research? Leave a comment and subscribe to the channel if you want to see more videos like this one.